Dubro Suspicion Files.
Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're peeling back the layers on one of the biggest, most complex conspiracy theories of our time, one that put a single person at the center of a global catastrophe. I mean, really think about that for a second. How did that happen? In this explainer, we are going to untangle that incredible web of claims, half-truths, and some valid critiques that placed Bill Gates right at the heart of the COVID-19 story. But before we can get into any of that, you have to understand this one crucial idea, the infodemic. You can think of it like this. There were two contagions spreading at the same time. One was the virus, and the other was a pandemic of misinformation that created this thick fog of confusion and made everything so much harder. Okay, let's dive right in with the first huge claim, the idea that Bill Gates and a group of global elites actually planned the pandemic, and that they used a simulation called Event 201 as their playbook. Now you can see why this caught on. Conspiracy narratives pointed straight to this exercise. I mean, it was co-hosted by the Gates Foundation just a few months before the real outbreak. The timing, it just felt a little too perfect, didn't it? For a lot of people, it looks, for all the world, like a dress rehearsal. But when you zoom out and look at the history here, a totally different picture emerges. Event 21 wasn't some unique, secret plot. It was actually just the latest in a long line, we're talking 2 decades, of these high-level biosecurity drills. Their whole purpose was to stress test our defenses and find the weak spots, not to script a disaster. So, if Event 201 was supposedly the how, this single sentence pulled from a 2010 TED Talk was presented as the why. To a lot of ears, this sounded like a straight-up confession of a depopulation agenda. But the full context tells a very different story. The statement was about slowing future population growth by improving child survival. It's a pretty standard concept in development economics, actually, called the demographic transition theory. The idea is simple. When fewer children die, parents naturally choose to have smaller families, which then stabilizes population growth over time. So it was about stabilizing growth, not about reducing the number of people already alive. All right, next up, let's look at the alleged tools of control, starting with a Microsoft patent that got famous, or maybe infamous, for reasons that had almost nothing to do with technology. And here it is. It's a patent for a cryptocurrency system that uses body activity data. But look, it wasn't the tech that went viral. It was that number, that publication number, which people almost immediately connected to the mark of the beast. But what does the patent actually describe? Well, it's a system for mining crypto using stuff you might already own, like a smartwatch or a Fitbit. It basically verifies your body's response to some task like watching an ad. There is absolutely no mention of injectable implants or microchips or vaccines anywhere in it. And that infamous number? Well, it turns out it was just a bureaucratic coincidence. The World Intellectual Property Organization uses a computer algorithm that just assigns these numbers automatically, one after the other. Microsoft had no say in it. Okay, but the fears that were the most potent, the most visceral, they were all about what was supposedly hiding inside the vaccine vials themselves. Let's unpack a few of those. So, take this one for example. There's an enzyme called luciferase. It's what makes fireflies glow. Well, that got mashed up with a totally different technology called quantum dots. And this created a really persistent myth that the vaccines would make people literally glow so the government could track them. The reality? Luciferase is a super common tool used in early lab research, but it's not an ingredient in the final vaccine that goes into anyone's arm. And this table is fascinating because it just lays out the claims versus the reality. The whole graphene oxide thing, that came from someone misidentifying simple salt crystals under a microscope. SM-102, yes, it's in the Moderna vaccine, but it's the safe, medical-grade version, not the toxic industrial one. And those creepy-crawly living organisms? Turns out it was just lint and other random debris on the microscope slides. Now, this is where the story takes a really important turn. We have to pivot now. We have to move away from the fantasy of microchips and glowing enzymes to look at the very real, very documented critiques of the Gates Foundation's actual power on the world stage. And this chart, wow, it just perfectly illustrates the sheer scale of that influence. When you look at who funds the World Health Organization, after major countries like Germany and the US, the Gates Foundation is one of the largest single donors. That gives a private, unelected foundation a massive amount of power to help shape global health priorities for all of us. And critics argue that this huge influence creates some real-world problems. They point to what they call a techno-solutionist bias, favoring a shiny new vaccine over something maybe more boring but essential, like building a clean water system. They also bring up the Foundation's defense of pharmaceutical patents, which many argue slowed down vaccine access for developing countries. See, these aren't myths. These are serious, complicated issues worth debating.
So that brings us to our final section, and really the most important question of all. Why? Why are these wild stories so powerful, so incredibly easy to believe?
Well, a huge piece of the puzzle is something psychologists call proportionality bias. Our brains, they kind of struggle with the idea that a tiny, invisible, random virus could bring the entire world to its knees. A powerful villain, a mastermind like Bill Gates, that just feels more proportional to the enormous scale of the disaster we all lived through. A big event must have a big cause. And then you pour fuel on that fire with something called agnotology, which is basically the deliberate manufacturing of doubt. The goal isn't even to prove that the conspiracy is true, it's to flood the zone with so much noise and conflicting information that people get what's called epistemic exhaustion. They just get so tired of trying to figure out what's real that they stop believing objective truth is even a thing. And that leaves us with one final thought, and it's a provocative one. Think about it. The conspiracy theorist is screaming about a phantom microchip that doesn't exist in a vaccine vial, while at the same time they're silently accepting the very real, constant, minute-by-minute tracking and data collection happening on the smartphone in their pocket. And that really makes you wonder, what's the real distraction here?